Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A very warm welcome to Meet Menaca. Today, we are having our episode 67. Are you an introvert, extrovert, or an ambivert? With Dr. Jihene Mrabet. She's a clinical psychologist, assistant professor in the American University of UAE, and the author. Today, a special welcome to her students who are joining from Dubai all the way on our forum. So a very warm welcome to you too. So about Meet Menaca a little bit, it features real people sharing real stories and experts in their fields, in particular around wellness. It's a vibrant 90-minute multicultural online talk show with the intention of celebrating you. It's a free event. You can register and join us by clicking on the link. Our team is sharing. We always share on all the social media platforms, but right now we are sharing it on Facebook and we will share on YouTube later as well. For people who have registered already, you can just sign in with the Zoom ID and password. If you want to be part of the community to make positive change, join us on the Facebook group, or you can follow us on YouTube. Please support our channel to add value, share inspirational messages, and create the positive change by subscribing. Hit the bell icon to be notified and benefit from the videos too. Coming back to episode 68 today, let me talk about the speaker. She's no stranger to this platform. She came and spoke about narcissism. I met Dr. Jihene Mrabet at another forum. We were co-speakers, and I was so impressed with her session. And then we connected and we became friends. And I have gone and given a talk in her university, and she has come and talked in our forum as well. She's a clinical psychologist, assistant professor, and an author, a doctor in clinical psychology with a deep interest in research and human psychology. Dr. Jihene Mrabet has 2 master's degrees. She has been practicing since 2008 and is passionate about teaching and transmitting knowledge to students. She's also an author, as I mentioned. A very warm welcome to you, Jihene, on the platform.
Thank you very much, Menaca. It's always a pleasure to be around you here, honestly. I always found your show very inspiring. You're speaking about very interesting topics, addressing very interesting, I think, questions that needs to be addressed and things that needs actually somehow to be fulfilled by people, right? Understanding what is happening. So I mean, when Menaca called me and she's like, will you be interested by talking a little bit about introvert, extrovert? I said, yeah, sure, 100%. I just need to bring my student in. Because I mean, this is the time where I have my happiness class. So these are my students in my happiness study class. And I'm very happy that they're joining us today. They're just joining the whole group. And I'm happy to see also some familiar faces from last time. My pleasure to be with you all the time.
Thank you, Jihene. So for my understanding, we have an expert today, but many of us are highly motivated by personal growth, and many people on this platform who regularly join us are. And it is all about increasing our self-awareness. So I think I, for one, have taken multiple personality tests to discover more and know about myself. But sometimes we still don't understand the best way for us to receive this information or communicate effectively to others. We are aware of the extremes, like if it is someone is totally extrovert or introvert. But for the longest time, I didn't understand either that there can be something in between, a combination of both, and it is a spectrum. So we must have more than one trait. I guess most of us do. It depends on what kind of extremity we come from. So what if we have the traits of both, which I think I am? That's what my discovery so far, unless until Jihene says something today, which triggers me to think something different about myself. for me, I think I'm an ambivert. The reason I am saying that is I am perceived as an extrovert usually because I'm the life of the party, and I can talk to anyone as much as one-to-one, mostly not in a big group. I think I'm not as sociable. So I think for the longest time I was perceived and I believed I'm an extrovert till I looked a bit deeply, and then I thought, oh, yes, okay, there's a bit of difference, and I think I am an ambivert. But so I am, as any of you are so keen to know what Jihene is trying to tell us to understand us a bit more. So, switch off all the other gadgets and pay attention, and let's find out whether you are an extrovert, introvert, or an ambivert. To begin with, just tell us what are the traits of an introvert and an extrovert, so that everyone can understand from the basics, and we can ask a deeper questions and discuss it further later.
Very good. Absolutely. We are going to start by this. We're going to start by extremes, as Menaca just explained. And we know that there is an ambivert, let's say, third category, but we are going to tackle the very first basic one. I'm going to talk about, larger or general, let's say, trait of personality. But then, of course, the more we are going to have question about it, and the more we are going to deepen it a little bit, I am going to give you some extra things here and there. So let's start by the introvert. The introvert are people that most of the time will prefer to be alone. Those are the person that are not actually threatened by being alone. They recharge themselves in solitary activities or solitary even sports. Even when they practice sport, most of the time they would prefer sports where it's just individual sport, where they will be just alone, or probably having just one friend that is very very close to them, someone that they're very familiar with. They have most of the time they take pleasure out of solitary activity, as I said, such as reading, such as writing, such as, for example, solitary activity, as I said. My voice is repeating. Can you please mute your mic? Okay, I think that there is a mic open, Ali. Okay, so let me go back again. So yeah, I was saying, so most of the time it goes through reading, writing, meditating. These kind of activities where you feel like you're alone, but you're appreciating being alone, right? You enjoy the solitude. And also you're a very thoughtful person. So most of the time, introvert person are observer, are very, very good observer, and they learn through observing. Actually, this is why they're very good observer. They're very good listeners, and most of the time they focus on being around small groups. They don't want to be around very big groups. Sometimes they feel like they're overwhelmed with a lot of vibes around them, so they prefer being around small group. And most of the time also they think a lot before speaking. They're not impulsive. They just take their time. They try to analyze the situation. They try to understand what is probably the best option, and then they will go for it. So in general, this is how an introvert may look like. Now, when we look to the extrovert, the other way around, so it's somehow the opposite, right? It's a person that would feel energy and would feel recharging his own pills or his own battery through being a lot of people. Being around a lot of people, right? I want to be around a lot of people all the time. I'm an attention seeker. I want people to look at me. I want people to focus with me. I want to make people happy. And most of the time, the extroverts are people that are funny, that are always trying to make jokes here and there. They're trying to talk a lot. They talk a lot, actually. They talk a lot, and sometimes it's very difficult to make them quiet a little bit, to have some time out with them. And sometimes it's even difficult to just answer, so they start a discussion and it's very difficult to stop them so that you can just exchange or share or have let's say a discussion as it should be. They have a lot of friends. They are most of the time very, very popular. They know a lot of people and a lot of people know them, and people seek their seek their closeness. Actually, they want to be around them. Why? Because most of the time, as I said, they're popular, right? So people that are admiring them because they think that they have a highly sociable, let's say, skills, and the people that are a little bit introvert or shy or fear someone else's judgment will just admire them so much and would be all the time would like to be around them in order to somehow mimic their behavior. And so the extrovert person also are person that are outgoing, that would prefer, for example, going for extreme sports. They are risk takers also. They're not afraid of just talking to strangers, being around strangers. Actually, it's quite the opposite. So the more they add someone else in the group, the better they feel. I mean, that makes them feel happy. That makes them feel somehow that they win some sort of a challenge. And most of the time, these are the person that talk out loud. You know, when you're in a place, for example, I'm in my office and sometimes I hear some of my colleagues talking in a very out loud way. That, oh my God, they're talking in a very out loud way. And I say, okay, these are extroverts. Okay, halas, I'm probably a little bit in my introvert bubble now. I cannot accept that. But yeah, I mean, this is how they are. And unfortunately, also sometimes they are very impulsive and they tend to react and then think about what they did. So it's the opposite of the introvert person. So yeah, in general, these are the different traits among introvert and extrovert.
Sure. Thanks, Jihene, for answering that, because I'm sure that question comes up in so many people's mind. The more aware they are, I think rightly so, self-awareness is becoming more important and more talked about recently. And hopefully people will pause and take time to understand about themselves a bit more. So going from there, as I alluded already, I thought I was either purely extrovert because people have perceived me, but I'm sure I know friends who think they're purely introverted as well. So are we purely introvert or extrovert, or are there shades of personality in between?
Of course. And you already said that, Menaca, in the beginning. There is a spectrum. I mean, as a human being, we should never think our personality as kind of boxes that we're either here, we're either there. No. It's never like this. It's always shades of something, shades of personality, shades of fear, shades even of sexuality orientation. It's always shades. We always have shades, right? It's never either a position or the other. Or it's, let's say, to not say never, I would say it's very rare, right? It follows somehow that curve. We have a normal curve, the normal distribution. So you have the extreme position where it's very rare. It's a very, very, very low percentage of people that are on the extreme. But in the middle, we have the people that are actually, yes, in the middle, right? The people that will have, they will be probably, that will have, I don't know, let's say 30% introvert and 70% extrovert, or vice versa, or 50% introvert, 50% extrovert, right? And that depends on many factors. I mean, it depends on our culture, it depends on how we were raised, it depends on the different experiences we went through. And this is why actually we, the old, let's say, model that was developed by Carl Gustav Jung in 1920, and that is the introvert and the extrovert, was here discussed and revisited again by Eysenck. And Eysenck here suggested to introduce the ambivert, because for him, we are much more in the middle, right? It was in the 1976, I think, something like that. So he said, no, I think that we're not that pure. I think most of the population are in the middle. We are like sometimes introvert and sometimes extrovert, depends on the situation, depends on the culture, depends on the mood, on my mood. I mean, depends on many other factors. And this is how the ambivert, let's say, category was introduced. And this is why we are indeed definitely talking about a spectrum, and we are not talking about definite position.
Sure. Thanks, Jane. It was really beneficial for me to understand it a while ago. So that's the reason I wanted to bring up the topic. And also thank you so much for one of the regular attendees, and the doctor has been a speaker on our platform as well, requested this topic. So thank you so much for asking to bring this topic up. So going from there, as I claim I am. You can, after today, I will know for sure whether I am or not. What is an ambivert personality?
Yeah. So exactly as I was explaining, an ambivert personality is a person that would be actually not purely introvert and not purely extrovert. So that would be a person that would, for example, in some situation that would like to stay alone, that would prefer to be in a solitary activities, but in some other situation would like to be around people. That's the kind of persons, for example, that would enjoy, for example, sometimes reading, but or sometimes, let's say, talking. That's a person that would be somehow in the middle, right? If we can just look at it in that way. So that's the kind of person that in certain situation or under certain circumstances would react in a very impulsive way, but in some other situation would just sit and would like to think about the situation before acting, right? So that's exactly in the middle. And that actually is 2/3 of the population. 2/3 of the population goes within the ambivert. So we are not, or very rare peer persons of us are purely introvert or purely extrovert. So the ambivert is that in between person that may show some traits, some introversion traits sometimes, and some extroversion traits sometimes. Again, as I was saying, depending on the experience, depending on the culture, depending on the age also of the person, depending on the situation, the mood, many factors can play a role into pushing us to go either this side or the other side. And also there is another factor that is very important. I will talk about it later, that is more related to the biology, our biology, the biology of the mind. I mean, how the mind is working. Is it also something that we're born with, or is it something that we develop? Is it, I mean, is it us impacting our brain to function in a certain way, or is it our brain already settled and then it's impacting us? I mean, that's the nature versus nurture question. So my student knows a lot about it. We have been discussing it so much, and I know that it's always controversial.
Thank you so much, Jane. It is, it is good to know that 2/3 of the population belongs to, we are not in the minority for sure. I guess, again, in ambivert, it depends on the combination where you fall in, and which you beautifully explained. So going from there, I just want to know, I'm sure a lot of our audiences are thinking the same. Why do we develop, I think you just touched upon it very briefly, why do we then develop introvert, extrovert, or ambivert personality?
Why or how do we develop it?
How do we?
How, yes. So how? So basically here, I'm going to tackle that biological part a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So a lot of researchers tried to kind of spot the biological origin of why someone would develop that kind of personality over the other. Here, a lot of researchers actually showed that, for example, through the and these have been proven through electroencephalogram, I mean, the study of how the brain functions. They have been showing that for the extrovert person, the introvert person has what we call a high cortical arousal level in their brain, which means that for them, the level of the arousal in the brain is already high. So they need to calm down themselves. They are not seeking for excitement. They're seeking for the opposite, because they need to just calm down. Whether the extrovert has a low cortical arousal in their brain and an autonomic nervous system, and this is why actually they need excitement. They need to just push it up a little bit. They need to raise it a little bit, right? And this is why some people would be looking more for excitement and enjoyable moments, where others would just look for something quiet and nice and just sit by. Some other also research has found that, for example, for the introvert, the extrovert, they have what we call the high blood flow within what the temporal lobe. Right, so the temporal lobe is the lobe that is most likely responsible of sensations and emotions. Right, so this is why they're very, very active. That part of their brain is very active, and these research showed that this is why these people are seeking for social interaction a lot. Right, because they're too much into sensations, feeling, and emotion sharing, and these kind of things. This is why actually extroverts are a lot into sharing emotions, where if we focus on introvert, we will see that the high activity or the highest activity will be more into the frontal lobe here. Like the frontal lobe is more responsible of the executive function, memorization, planification, problem solving. So this is why they will be more focusing on thinking, the thinking process more than the reacting process. And we will see that among the introvert will be more reluctant, let's say, to share their emotion and to express their emotions with other people. They prefer to solve their problems or to process their idea by themselves in their head, and they don't prefer to share it with someone else. Whether the extrovert will, whenever they face any problem, most of the time they'll be just taking the phone, trying to call to their friend, you know what happened to me, it happened this and that and this and that, what do you think I should do? And I think I should do this. And I mean, it's always about sharing, expressing, sharing, expressing. We have also something else that is noticed within the extrovert, the dopamine level. The dopamine reaction is stronger among extrovert than introvert. And this is why, the dopamine is some sort of a reward hormone or reward neurotransmitter. So this is why they will be seeking for it a lot, because it has a highest impact within the extrovert than the introvert. And finally, I mean, some PET scan research, the PET scan is the positron emission tomography. This is actually some kind of a machine that would help us to spot the images of our organ and tissues at work. So we can see what are the different areas that are reacting through a radioactive substance that will be injected, and we'll be able to spot it. We'll be able to see where this radioactive area is just shining at that very specific moment when that person is doing that very specific activity. So it was actually proven that within the extrovert, the PET scan showed that the fight and flight reaction with an extrovert is highly active. And that is logic, because again, if you remember, extroverts are more about reacting. They're more about doing an action. So whether run away from it, whether reacting to it, attacking, whether fleeing away. So they're more into the action. What should I do in that very specific situation? Whether the same research showed that within the introvert group, the PET scan showed that the highest activity was more focusing within the resting activity and the digestion activity. So that also showed that the introverts are more focusing into just calming down. They're more focusing into, these are the areas that are the most important for them. And remember, they're more into their thoughts. They're more thoughtful. They take their time to think about situations. So this is what the, let's say, neurological aspect showed. So now some research said if we focus on nature versus nurture, if we focus on nature, we're gonna focus on heredity, right? So if we focus on heredity, we may tell that these kind of, let's say, personalities are built up in something that we inherit from our parents. So we inherit a certain functioning or brain functioning process. And this is why we are who we are. This is why we're born with certain specificities, brain specificities, and that is actually pushing us to be more introvert or extrovert. So that's the nature part, the heredity part. But then if we focus a little bit on the nurture aspect, many researchers also explain that it's not only a matter of heredity, it's not only about me born in that very specific situation, but it's more also about how the culture is pushing me or where the culture is pushing me. So for example, if you look into Western culture, like American culture, for example, you'll see that all the children will be raised to be extrovert. All of them will be encouraged to express their emotion. They will be encouraged to speak out whatever they think about. They'll be encouraged to be engaged in activities, to talk to people, to be sociable. So they will be pushed to do these kind of things. And these kind of behavior will be rewarded too much, to the extent that all the children will be somehow trying to follow this reaction. But for example, if we look to the Japan, I remember that I was going through a research and that somehow hit me. In Japan, if a child is looking to an adult into the eye, That is actually identified as a psychopathic trait of personality, which means that this child actually is a potential criminal, will be a potential criminal. So for them, it's a matter of disrespect. A child should not even look to the eye with an adult, right? So here, of course, if this is their belief, or these are their value, or this is the culture value, then of course they want to be encouraging children to express themselves. They want to be encouraging children to talk about their emotion, or to reply back to an adult, to even talk to an adult, right? So that would encourage more introvert personality than extrovert personality. So the culture here is playing a very, very important role. With the culture, of course, we have the parent, how the parents are raising their children. If the parents are also introvert, more into introversion or more into extroversion, the activity that they are engaging their children in. Also, we have the experiences that the children will go through, and whether these experiences will be pleasant or not. I mean, if, for example, I try to engage myself into, I'm in kind of an introvert child, but then my parent tried to put me into a, let's say, group sport, right? A sport that is more about collective sport. And I'm going in there, and it's amazing. I mean, I found people that are so cute, so nice, and they helped me into getting adapted with them. So here I am going to enjoy it. And if I'm going to enjoy it, that would probably help me to enjoy a little bit more that extrovert part of me. But if the opposite is happening, if I'm engaging myself in collective activity and then it's not working, and then I'm feeling left out, and then I'm rejected, or I'm bullied by people around me because I'm shy, because I'm not that skilled, for example, on whatever I'm doing, and I cannot reply back. I cannot, because I'm an introvert. I'm not the kind of person that knows how to reply back, because extroverts also are associated with emotional intelligence, whether the introvert are not really into emotional intelligence, so they don't really know how to handle social situation because they tend to avoid it most of the time. So if that kind of experience is not working, then it's going to be somehow a traumatic situation, and it's going to just push me back to my introversion bubble. So it's like, again, nature versus nurture.
Beautifully explained, Jane. I don't think anyone can explain this any better. So thank you so much. I have understood this so much at a deeper layer for sure. I'm sure many of us on this forum and on the Facebook who are listening and will be listening on the YouTube, you have perhaps heard the saying, children should be seen, not heard. We have definitely have come across that. So, I guess this is an extreme version of that, children looking at an adults into adults' eyes. So I think there is, again, there's a spectrum and variations. So what are the signs of introversion, extroversion, and ambivert in children? Because I'm sure all the parents and grandparents here, or who have children in the family, are all thinking, okay, hold on a minute. How do we know? What do we look for?
Absolutely. So these are actually, it's very easy actually to spot these signs, but sometimes also with children, we may be confused. So this is why we need to pay attention. And let me start with the introversion, because that's probably the most confusing one, because introversion may sometimes be confused with shyness. I mean, a child that is introvert may be understood or perceived as a shy child, or sometimes a child is going through a developmental period where it's normal for him to be shy, because I mean, this is him being around unfamiliar faces, so that's totally normal for him to put some distance between himself and other people. But that could be understood as introversion. Oh yeah, this is his personality. Then no, it's not his personality. It's just a moment of his life, a developmental phase. A personality or a trait of personality is something that would stay with the child among years. Right? So it would stay from 1, 3, 4, 5 years, but a developmental phase would probably stay for 6 months, something like that. And then the child will move on to something else. And also, if we talk about a trait of personality or introversion trait of personality, we talk about something that would repeat itself in every situation, like this situation, for example, right? In every time, for example, the child is meeting an unfamiliar person, he will be all the time hiding. Here, yes, probably if that happened all the time and happened over a long period of time, then yeah, probably my child has somehow an introversion or is developing an introversion personality. But if it happens around some people and some people not, so no, we're not really into that. Probably this is something different. Probably the child feels more secure around some people more than others. So it's another explanation that we should be looking at. So an introvert child is a child that would prefer staying alone. That, for example, you will ask him, for example, to go out to play with kids outside, and he will tell you, no, I want to just stay with my tablet. I want to play with my phone. I want to play with my friend through the internet. Now we know that, right? Everyone is playing through internet. So the introvert children are more into that. I mean, it will be difficult for you to drag them out of the house and to push them somewhere outside to do something outside. The introvert child is a child that will be not talking a lot. He will be more observing. It's that kind of child that you will keep in a place. In his room, for example, he would be playing with his toys and he won't require any assistance. He won't call for you. He won't feel bored very quickly. I mean, you can just check on him. You can open the door and check on him. You'll find him just playing. He's in his world, in his imaginary world, and he's completely fine with it, right? I remember, for example, my brother, more specifically, had that kind of personality. Actually, he has an introvert personality, most likely. I mean, I'd say he's more introvert than extrovert. It's in the shades, but more introvert. But when he was a child, I remember my mom used to all the time go and distract him from what he's doing. I mean, he was the kind of baby that you just put it on a place, you put his game around him, and you just forget about him. He's not going to do anything. He's just very quiet, very calm, playing, not doing anything. And my mom was like, oh my God, he's so quiet. I cannot stand it. And she was like, all the time trying to distract him and trying to tell him, what are you doing? And he was like, leave me alone. He was like doing these sounds. Like he was really, really feeling annoyed by her trying to get into his environment because he was good in his environment, in his introvert bubble. So these children are also children that would appreciate a solitary moment. They would like you to read for them. They would like the environment around them to be calm. They don't like when there are a lot of people around them, or sometimes when there are a lot of people around them because we have, for example, a party, or because we are in a situation where actually, yes, indeed, we have a lot of people. They would try to exclude themselves from the group. They won't be really engaging in the group. They could be engaging a little bit, but then they would just take their toy or whatever, and they will just split away, or they will just play with one person right at the backstage. They won't be really within the other. They will not look for the attention of people around them. So these are most likely the introvert children. Now the extrovert is different. It's totally opposite again. So these are children that actually will engage in activities a lot. They will actually literally throw themselves into a group. I mean, you don't have even to encourage them. I mean, you go for a park, for example, you go to a park, you just sit, and then they are already running and going to the park, playing with and trying to know the kids that are in there. And sometimes if they are a little bit shy, they will look at you, you will tell them, go ahead and take for example, your ball and go share it with them. They will not let you ask again. They will just run to do it. Okay, you told me that. Okay, I'm gonna do it. So they love being into that kind of actions, and they will also. Sometimes they will be very impulsive. Sometimes they could be aggressive because actually they are into melting into the relation. And remember, they are impulsive. They don't really think before doing. And sometimes they could be offensive. They will try also. They don't really like solitary activities or play. They prefer someone to play with them. I mean, they get bored very quickly. They feel alone. They don't stand being alone. So what else? I mean, anything that will be more focusing on having people around would actually tell you that this kid is more extrovert. They regarding internet, they may play internet games, but they will be, because now everyone is playing games on internet, but they will be more focusing on internet games that would actually engage people live talking, right? Like these kind of games where you just have the cask with you and you're talking at the same time and you're just joking. And so you're not just playing and that's it. No, you're playing and interacting at the same time. They will also try most of the time to go out. If you're asking them, for example, whether they would like to stay at home and listen to some music or watch a movie or sometimes or watch a cartoon or going out for a walk, they'll tell you going out for a walk. They would prefer going out for a walk, definitely, or going to a park, or for example, going to see some friends. So these are most likely the kids that are developing, let's say, a little bit more extroversion than introversion. And again, I'm insisting on the word developing because we're talking about children. And when we talk about children, I mean the personality is not set yet and everything is still going on.
Sure. Thanks, Jihene. It was very interesting to know, how you can spot these things and how they develop. It's like, I wish I knew this, a couple of decades back almost, but better late than never. Particularly listening to you, mom and your brother was really interesting. So going from there, and also obviously in places like Japan, where it's perceived that if a child looks into an adult's eye, their psychopathic tendency or some sort of some similar ideas, do you think people do force the children to change his or her personality, and should we do it?
Yes, indeed, Menaca, I think that we do, that parents most of the time do. And most of the time they do it because there is society pressure, because this is how the child should be, this is how we should be as persons, right? And because also of our own education, this is what we've learned from our parents, this is how a child should be. I mean, a child should be reacting in this way. For example, if I'm thinking about British most of the time, I mean, I've been, when I get to know more the British education, I went a little bit, why are they so rigid? Why the child cannot express himself and he has to hide his emotions, right? And be that block without really showing emotion. But then this is how they are. This is their culture. It's more about dignity. It's more about keeping everything inside. I mean, that makes them look probably a little bit tougher, right? A little bit more in control. And in my culture, it's different. I mean, go ahead, say whatever you want. But in my culture, be careful. If you're a boy, you shouldn't show emotion. You shouldn't show that you're afraid. You shouldn't show that you're crying. Never cry. You're a boy. You're a man. Men never cry, right? So we always have these kind of I would call them biases, right? Cognitive biases in our brain that we inherit from our family, from our parents, and we keep on repeating them, sometimes with intention and sometimes without really having that intention to do so. It's like unconscious, right? We do that automatically and we're not even aware that we're doing it. So when we're doing this, we are actually pushing our child to be a model of what we want, or a model of what the society wants. Why? Because we think as parents that this is how we will help our child adapt to the society. This is how we will help him actually merge into the society and being accepted by the community and being a good citizen, right? And someone that would be successful in that culture, which is in part true, right? But in some other part, we can also hear when we force our children to act differently from what they want or who they want to be, actually here it could provoke the complete opposite. We can actually send them a completely different message, telling them that we're not accepting you the way you are. And if you're not capable of changing, then you're not worth our love, or you're not worth being loved or respected or appreciated in this community. In reality, we're not we're not just a copy of each other. I mean, everyone is unique. Everyone has his own personality, his own way of dealing with situation. So we shouldn't all react exactly the same way. And as parents, we should accept differences. And as, I'd say, a big community, we should also accept differences. I mean, we should show children and parent and future generation that we accept to be different, and that's okay to be different. I mean, this is not something so bad. Indeed, we have to be similar in some areas so that we can identify ourselves to each other, right, and feel a little bit, same. But there are some aspects where we should be different, because our differences is that what will make us complementary. If we're all the same, then it's not a puzzle. The puzzle won't work, right? So we need to be complementary somehow. So yes, forcing children to become someone else, or to develop a different personality from what their instincts are taking them to, is not a good idea. But what we can do is that if I think, for example, that my child is too extrovert, or he is too introvert, too much, for example, then I can start implementing some activities like extroversion activity or introversion activity that would either provoke more enjoyment and provide the child with actually opportunity to discover this side of himself that he probably not aware of, or calming him a little bit, because actually here also we are letting him understand that there is a way for him to calm down a little bit. There is a way for him to enjoy things differently. There is a way for him also to accept in his mind that some people would like to stay alone, and that's okay, and that's normal, because the people that are extrovert cannot understand people that would like to stay alone, and most of the time would see that kind of a reaction as a rejection. You don't want to hang out with me, so that probably you don't like me. This is how they interpret it, and that would lead to misunderstanding and a lot of problems, of course, and a lot of drama. But if you help them understanding that some people actually prefer to stay alone a little bit, not because they don't like you, but just because they need to recharge themselves a little bit, then it would be much easier for them to travel around all of this, and to find their way, and to understand a little bit more, and to develop their emotional intelligence in a better way.
Sure. Thanks, Jihene. And I think it really, really helpful, everything what you're saying, particularly for people who are around children, whether it might be your teachers, coaches, parents, grandparents, family, friends. I think it's really important to know that it's okay to have either personality or in between, and accept them for who they are and nurture them. So going from there, you raised a very important point, how we can, interact differently. So as an expert in the field, can you tell the audience, how can we interact and care for these children who are introvert or extrovert or ambivert?
Very good. So ambivert actually are the easiest, let's say, kids to care for and to guide, because they're both in both sides. They prefer, and they like introvert activity, they like extroverted activity. So whatever activity you will be suggesting, they will be just following you. It's okay. Sometimes it depends on their mood. They'll not be okay with this, will be okay with something else. But it works both ways for them. But what is a little bit more difficult is the one that are more into extroversion, or the one that are more into introversion. Here, first of all, we need to spot and to, let's say, I'm going to say diagnose the personality, right? First of all, and try to understand your child, try to listen to him. Let him tell you what he thinks. The problem as parents that we parents do most of the time, that they assume that they know what is good for their children, which is most of the time right, let's admit that. But in some other cases, we spend too much time listening to ourselves, reading books, and we are not listening to our children, which should be the very first thing that we should do. Just tell me what's making you feel happy. What makes you feel happy? What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? What is the activity that you want to do? Sometimes we put them into sports, and we don't even ask them what type of sport they would like to engage in. And then after that, we're not happy because they're not achieving well, or we're not happy because they're not going to the sport, and they're just finding excuses to not go. It's normal. They don't want to go to it. They're not enjoying their times. So we need to include them within any kind of decision that is related to them. That's very important, first of all. Then we need also to suggest diverse activity. If, for example, in my family, let's imagine that I have, let's say, 3 kids. Okay, 2 of them are extrovert, are more, let's say, extrovert, and 1 of them is introvert. And I want to have a family day where we are going all to go outside and, for example, spend the day at the park playing with a ball and just playing, or for example, playing tennis or doing any kind of family activity. So 2 of my kids will be very happy because they love it, but 1 of them won't be that happy, right? Because he's not really into that. So I should provide that kid with the possibility to sit alone, to have, for example, his earphone, to take his book with him. If he doesn't want to play with us, I shouldn't, guilt trip him. It's fine. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to play. I can invite him once, twice, just to show him that it's really important for us, or probably to offer him here a possibility to join us and to discover something. But if he doesn't want to, if he insists on not wanting to participate, it's okay. Leave him alone, and don't show him that angry face that you didn't play with us, you left us alone. Don't do that, right? Why are you guilt tripping him? You're just telling him that we're not happy because of who you are? No. Or we don't love you because you are like this? No. We should all the time encourage our kids to be themselves. It's okay. And even if we're not happy, it's not about us, it's about them. This is the issue also, the problem, and the confusion that we're always in. We tend to be happy. We should be happy, but what about your kid? Is he really happy? That's the most important here. This is what we are talking about. Also, that's very important here. And here I'm addressing a teaching part because you talked about teaching, and that's very important. Researchers showed that introvert kids are most of the time perceived by teacher as less intelligent than extrovert kids. So that's also problematic. Why? Because actually it's a vicious circle. If as a teacher, I perceive a child as not intelligent because he is introvert, then I won't invest him in class. I want to include him in class. I want to ask him to participate. And if I'm doing this, actually here I'm impeding his learning process, right? So I'm participating into him not learning well. So what is very important here as a teacher is to understand that I need actually to diversify the activities and the kind of exercises I'm suggesting to my student. And that's the same for parents. If the teacher are not doing that at home, at school, the parent should do that at home. I should diversify the activity, practical exercises, but I need also to provide him with more, let's say, theoretical exercises, just to check where is his predilection, let's say, state, right? Is he more better here or here? Does he, the same exercise that would treat exactly the same level of competency but propose in a different way, that would actually help him into discovering his competencies and developing his skills, right? Something else that is very important, research showed that actually the introvert person are actually, and here we're not talking about perception, we're talking about statistics, the introvert persons are the ones that are having best grades when we talk about academic results. But when we talk, for example, about success also, the extrovert tend to have very good results at school level, but it tends to decrease when we go to university. And that's completely normal because remember, the more we go, we develop, the more we get toward adolescence, the more our interest will switch to social relationship, to seduction, to love, to attraction, to these kind of all different important information. And here the child will be just distracted. I'm not focusing on my classes anymore. I'm focusing on something else and someone else, and I want to understand people. I want to understand why this person is reacting this way. Does this person love me? Does this person like me? Why this person reacted in this way? And that would completely somehow hamper sometimes the learning process, and that actually is driving parents nuts. I have a lot of parents that comes to me and they're like, oh my God, the grades were so good. And now he's going through puberty, or now he went to that secondary school, or he's going to university and things are going mad. I don't know what's happening to that child. He's completely losing it. So I tend to explain that it's normal, that their interests are shifting because they're extrovert. They're just more into curious. They're more curious into the relationship and how these kind of things are going on. And of course, not talking also about the instinct and all the hormones exploding at a very specific period of time. So here it's very important to understand also that the extroverts are very skilled when it comes to emotional intelligence. That's quite logic, right? Because they're into social interaction a lot. So they kind of understand how this person is reacting, how the other person is reacting. They engage, they put themselves into a situation where they're learning from what is happening to them. Right? I'm in situation and I'm learning. Oh, something happened to me over here. Oh, yes, I now understand. I know why this person is reacting this way. While an introvert will more stay aside and try to observe, or for example, will try to learn from books, right? Or from, for example, movies. That is also another way of learning. But again, being more immersed within the situation is always providing you with a better outlook into the situation. So yeah, I mean, indeed, here we have different way of caring. I think the very first important thing that I need to highlight is, first of all, listen to your child, observe him, take time to really discover his personality, and then once you know what is his, let's say, let's say is he more introvert or extrovert, and then you will be able here to provide him with activity that would make him feel happy, right? And at the same time, you would offer him some opportunity to experience something else in order for him to develop himself in a more balanced way. But the most important is already to make your child feel happy. Because if they're happy, they're going to enjoy being around you. They are going to talk to you. They are going to develop their personality with a lot of a self-esteem. They will feel loved. They will feel accepted. And that will help them to become the adult that we really want them to be, and not really just take a model and try to model them and to put them in that way, or to push them in a way that would go against their happiness or their well-being.
Thank you, Jihene. We, as parents, including myself, no exceptions, I think we all have a model for children even before they were born or soon after they're born. And I think that's where the issue comes, because I think if they don't fit into your model of the world, and then you somehow think you have to adapt them and change them and create them in a certain way, or definitely nudge them in that direction. So I think it's a very important session today, and we have learned a lot. I was planning to ask you about highly sensitive personality, and I'm very passionate about the topic. I wrote an article and which got published. I know we are almost closing time running, but maybe it's a topic on its own for another day. But let me just quickly grab what for in a couple of minutes. I know like 1/5, 20% of the personality is or population in the world is highly sensitive personality. When we come to ambivert, I think there is also a play of that. Can you tell us a little bit superficially, and of course, if there's more interest, then we will get you back to talk about it in depth later on.
So about highly sensitive personality?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I think that, that's definitely need us to just have a session and to talk. I mean, we have our time to talk about it, because I mean, we need to understand first why or where this highly sensitive personality is coming from. Because when we say highly sensitive, first of all, what do we mean by that? Are we talking about people that are paranoid, that are most of the time think that they're overjudged most of the time, and that, for example, think that people are trying to harm them, or people are bad by nature and they're trying all the time to put them into a bad situation? Or are we talking about people that have very low self-esteem, or are we talking about people that have narcissistic flows? And this is why, I mean, they feel like they're not loved enough, they're not accepted enough, and this is why they either actually isolate themselves and become what we call the avoidant personality, or they will be more aggressive. And there could be here actually become an antisocial personality, which is sometimes really surprising for people. So some people will tell you how a person that have narcissistic flow, or a person that goes through traumatic experience during childhood, will become an antisocial. Actually, it happened a lot. That's a defense mechanism. I was abused. I was aggressed. So in order for me to not be aggressed again, I will identify myself to the aggressor and I will become the aggressor. So in that way, nobody will hurt me anymore, right? So, I mean, it's a different shades of reaction that we can have. And the sensitivity can express itself in many different manners also. So I think that it's a very good topic and that a lot of personality could be included in there. Different type of personality also that were displayed by the DSM-5 and that could be interesting also for us to spot a little bit on these personalities. Of course, for example, one of the courses that I'm teaching to my student is type of personality and how we have to cope with these personality. And what I do is that I'm taking the DSM-5 personalities, trying to explain the different trait of personalities and also tell them how to cope with these kind of personalities. I mean, sometimes you may tell me, I don't want to be friends with an antisocial person, right? But sometimes you don't have the choice. Sometimes this antisocial person is your dad, it's your mom, it's your sister. I mean, sometimes you marry someone you don't know his personality, but he is an antisocial. So, but above all, you love that person and you want to maintain the relationship. So, I mean, being in a relationship that is not really all the time healthy doesn't mean that we need to cut it off. Sometimes we need to try to make it work. So how? At least try some strategies, but then if of course doesn't work, then unfortunately it's not working, but at least try somehow to fix it a little bit. So I think that's definitely something that we can talk about later.
Sure, of course. This is another area I'm interested in, so I'm sure we will talk about it later and perhaps have another session on this show about that, because I think it's time for us to open up and talk about these things. I think, yes, you mentioned it could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be someone close to you who you want to be in touch. But I think it's also the most important thing is to be able to identify. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
I'm going to tell you something that is very funny. One of my students to whom I was teaching this class, I taught them this class, and then the class after that, I just opened. I was like, "Hi everyone, how are you doing?" And he was like, "Doctor, I want to tell you something." I was like, "Yeah, please go ahead." He's like, "Doctor, I love you and I hate you at the same time." I was like, that's a very weird declaration, but why? I mean, I want to know. It's like, I love you because I really learned a lot in your class, but I hate you because going through the last class makes me realize that I'm a little bit narcissistic personality and that I don't want to face myself with this. I don't want to accept it. Narcissist could be nice, right, doctor? So yeah, learning about ourselves and trying to understand more how we function is sometimes difficult. I mean, self-awareness comes with a price. We need to accept it, right? We need to accept that we're not that perfect. We're not, and that's normal. I mean, nobody's perfect anyway. So we need to understand also that, again, there is always shade. When we say narcissistic, we have that something in background always telling us, oh, narcissistic are always bad. Not always. They have also good sides, right? But the problem, we need to understand why am I developing, or did I develop a narcissistic personality, and how I can fix my flaws. It's all about development, change, and nothing is settled once and for all.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jihene. I'm really grateful for you for enlightening all the audiences, and I'm hoping many more people can reach this through the YouTube later. For people who are on the platform today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon, so every time when we have a session, it will notify you, and also it will help us spread the message far and wide, because this is for a social cause, as we have said many times. So you will be helping us to help others. So, and this is a topic, I think, which will benefit every single person. I can tell it confidently. So thank you so much, Jihene, and your expertise, your experience in the clinical field, everything, and the teaching, it really came through. So thank you so much. I don't think I could have got a better speaker for this particular subject. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Following tradition, people who are on the Zoom, please hold on. And for people who are on the Facebook, we are still not finished. Following tradition, I am going to ask Julie Tushingham to announce the next week's speaker. You would know why very shortly.
Thank you, Menaca. Hello, everyone. What a fantastic talk. Thank you so much. I am very excited and honored to announce our speaker for next week. On the 28th of November, we will be talking about enhancing well-being and the power of his smile with Dr. Menaca. So the tables are turning a little bit, Dr. Menaca. We're going to be preparing for this coming week, and we look forward to welcoming you all. Menaca will share lots of her insights and learnings over the year. So I am really looking forward to hosting. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for that. And over to Dr. Anton Kanagasabai, who is well known as Dr. Bala, to give the vote of thanks, please.
As an ardent supporter of Menaca and team, and maybe as a consultant psychiatrist, I am given the honor today to give the vote of thanks. So, Dr. Jihene Mrabet, it was a wonderful analysis of the introversion, extroversion dichotomy, and we have different people sitting. And I really enjoyed talking about the children and how they are developing and how the culture and the environment influences and the expectation of the culture. So thank you very much. It was really an in-depth analysis. As consultant psychiatrists, we know something about introversion, extroversion traits, etc. But it's lovely to have the in-depth analysis from a psychologist. And thank you again. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Bala, for that. So for people who are on the Zoom, please wait on. And people who are on the Facebook, as you now know, I am the speaker for the next week. It is about enhancing well-being with the power of smile on the 28th November 2021. So hoping to see you all in the same time, same place, at a totally different role. And thank you so much for Julie Tushingham for agreeing to host the show. So it has come to that time of the day for people who are joining on Facebook to say goodbye. Until we see you next time, stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.